And we are remembering the legendary boxer and cultural icon who died last night from a respiratory illness at the age of 74. With more on Muhammad Ali, we're joined by Scott Russell, co-host of CBC's Road to the Olympic Games. And speaking of the Olympics, we'll get to it. We'll talk about Atlanta in a second, but let's talk about Rome way back in 1960.
Yeah, Rome back in 1960. That's where Muhammad Ali came out in many ways. He was then known as Cassius Clay. Great things in Rome in 1960. Rayford Johnson, the great decathlete. Abibi Bikila ran barefoot in the marathon. And then there was the light heavyweight title in boxing. And the Louisville Lip, as he was known back then, because he was a chatterbox and he was extremely effervescent. That was Cassius Clay, who had a great left jab. And he absolutely all over the Polish fighter Tadeusz Wałaszek to win the gold medal and the light heavyweight championship at the 1960 Rome Olympics, again as Cassius Clay. But that's when the persona, Andrew, in many ways emerged onto the world scene, and he turned pro not long after that, but he did so as the Olympic champion.
And Ali had plenty of legendary fights. We're going to talk about them, but let's talk about a couple of legendary fights right here in Canada. Yeah,
this was after he had already converted to the Nation of Islam in 1964, and then in 1966, what a great fight at the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. He took on George Chuvalo, who is the Canadian champion and a contender at times for the heavyweight title. This was, you know, I remember listening to this with my father distinctly on the radio. I'm that old, Andrew, but I followed it, every move of it. Such a charismatic figure was Muhammad Ali at the time. And the thing was, George Chuvalo kept coming. His eyes were closed because of the punching of Ali. But Chuvalo would not be knocked down, and in fact, Chuvalo was never knocked down in his professional career. Not even the great Muhammad Ali could do it. And after the fight, Ali, who had taken Chuvalo slightly lightly going into the fight at the Maple Leaf Gardens, said that George Chuvalo may have been the toughest man I've ever fought at the time. He couldn't put him down to the mat. The two remained close friends and colleagues throughout the rest of Ali's life.
And Ali fought Joe Frazier 3 times, and 2 of their bouts classics.
1971 at the Madison Square Garden. This was called by some as the greatest fight of all time. Joe Frazier was able to knock Muhammad Ali down. Ali was coming back after 3 years away. He was a conscientious objector. He denied conscription, but he lost that fight, the first loss of his professional career. There was a fight in the middle, and then they had the Thrilla in Manila in 1975, and at this time Muhammad Ali had regained his heavyweight title, and this was one of the greatest fights of all time. Afterwards, Ali said, Joe Frazier, I take everything back I said about Joe Frazier. He is the greatest fighter in the world next to me.
Wow. All right. So, but maybe his most satisfying win came in the Rumble in the Jungle.
Rumble in the Jungle. This is 1974. He takes on another Olympic champion. That's the great George Foreman, who, as you know, has become quite a charismatic figure over the course of his career. There was the rope-a-dope involved in this fight. Tremendously popular, the fight in Zaire amongst the African people. Both Ali and Foreman became such popular figures, and it was Ali who 7 years after he was stripped of his title regained the heavyweight championship of the world with the victory over George Foreman. And the Rumble in the Jungle will be remembered for all time, and as you say, perhaps the most satisfying fight of Ali's career.
And then from 1960 in Rome to 1996 in Atlanta, what a moment. I mean, everybody who can remember remembers that.
Yeah, and I remember being at the Olympic Games in the International Broadcast Center watching the opening ceremony, and Ali being the final torchbearer, taking the flame, racked with Parkinson's disease. And I don't know, you know, it becomes quite emotional.
Yeah.
Here was the man who was perhaps the greatest sporting figure in the history of sport. And his strongest moment.
And the flame was lit. Wow.
Incredible. You know, he Andrew, transcended sport. He defined his persona to the public. He stood for so many things, and he was declared as the Sports Illustrated sporting personality of the 20th century. But I would argue that there will never be anybody else like Muhammad Ali. He was that great and known by so many people and affected so many people around the world.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.